and you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Christian Sands' biography and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about some of his best albums of all time. Here's a quick recap of what's coming up. We're starting things off with Christmas Stories, a holiday album that refuses to play it safe. Familiar classics are reimagined with swing, blues, and joy, while original compositions bring fresh meaning to the season, proving Sands can honor tradition without falling into cliché. From there, we shift into something far more personal. Embracing Dawn is Sands at his most vulnerable and ambitious, a cinematic, emotional-driven concept album that traces heartbreak, healing, and resilience, across styles ranging from gospel to neo-soul to straight-ahead jazz. Then we rewind the clock. Footprints takes us back to the beginning, an early leader date capturing Sands as a young prodigy already drawn to melody and rhythm. And Harmonica follows, documenting that crucial transition from promise to identity. So this series of albums is about contrast, celebration, introspection, beginnings and breakthroughs, and how every chapter helps shape the artist that Christian. The first one's called Christmas Stories, released in 2023. So holiday albums are tricky. They can slide into background music very easily. Pleasant, forgettable, seasonal wallpaper. Christmas Stories does something different. It treats holiday music as serious material without draining it of joy. Christian Sands approaches these songs with respect, but never reverence that turns stiff. From Jingle Bells to Silent Night, the melodies are recognizable, but the arrangements are alive. There's swing here, there's blues, there's space for improvisation that feels natural, not forced. What really elevates the album is Sands' willingness to contribute original material alongside the classics. Tracks like Snow Days and The Gift don't feel like filler, they feel like reflections, written from inside the season rather than pasted onto it. This project also expands Sands' sonic palette. Collaborators like vibraphone is Stefan Harris and saxophonist Jimmy Green add texture and warmth, pushing the music beyond the intimacy of piano trio into something more communal. Critics and listeners alike have pointed out the album's joyful spirit and inventive arrangements. That word, joyful, matters. This is holiday music that swings, but it also smiles. Why does Christmas Stories matter? Because it proves versatility. Sands shows he can reanimate standards and seasonal music without slipping into cliché, staying rooted in jazz sophistication while welcoming listeners who might not usually reach for a jazz record. The next one's called Embracing Dawn, released in 2024. If Christmas Stories feels outward-facing, generous and communal, Embracing Dawn turns sharply inward. This is Christian at his most personal, arguably his most ambitious. Embracing Dawn is a concept album, cinematic in scope, mapping an emotional journey through heartbreak, recovery and resilience. Stylistically, the album refuses to sit still. You'll hear neo-soul textures, classic swing, gospel-inflected harmonies, even hints of jazz rock, but none of it feels scattered. There's a narrative continuity here, each track functioning like a chapter in a larger story. What makes this album resonate is that it's clearly lived in. Sands has spoken about drawing directly from personal experience, and you can hear it. The music breathes, it surges, it struggles, it heals. Critics have praised Embracing Dawn for its emotional honesty and stylistic reach, calling it Sands' most fully realized artistic statement to date. And that feels accurate. Why does it matter? Because Embracing Dawn crosses boundaries. Jazz purists will appreciate the craft, but you don't need to know chord substitutions or leading edge to feel this album. It offers depth, narrative, and beauty, the kind that lingers after the final note fades. To really understand how far Christian Sands has come, you have to go back, all the way back to Footprints. Released in 2002, this is one of Sands' earliest recordings as a leader. He was still very young, and you can hear it, not as a flaw but as an openness, a curiosity, a pianist already shaping ideas even before fully knowing where they might lead. Footprints didn't arrive with massive critical fanfare, but it's becoming treasured among fans who want to trace the roots. There's something compelling about hearing raw potential, the early fingerprints of a voice that would later become unmistakable. Why does Footprints matter? Because it's a starting line. It reminds us that even the most polished artists begin with exploration, trial, and instinct. This album isn't about perfection, it's about promise. 2 years later, Harmonica shows that promise beginning to take clearer shape. The playing feels more deliberate, the improvisation stretches a little further, the harmonic language deepens. You can hear Sands experimenting, pushing ideas, pulling them back, seeing what holds. There are touches of post-pop alongside moments of exploratory improvisation, signaling a young musician testing the edges of tradition. Harmonica is often overlooked when people talk about Sands' discography, but it plays a crucial role. This is the bridge between prodigy and professional. Why it matters is simple. Harmonica documents transition. It captures the moment when ability starts becoming identity, when influences begin to synthesize into something personal. Taken together, these four albums reveal the true arc of Christian Sands, from youthful beginnings to stylistic exploration to emotional depth, and you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Christian Sands' biography and best hits. Now it's time for some trendy music news. Elysium Furnace Works has just dropped the lineup for its 2026 season in New York. It kicks off with a serious moment on Saturday, March 14th. For the first time ever, Pulitzer Prize winner and MacArthur genius Tyshawn Sorey teams up with legendary multi-instrumentalist and instrument builder Cooper Moore. Two giants, one stage, that alone says it all. and the season only gets deeper, from Jamaldine to Kuma and Mary Halvorsen to fiery strings and a jaw-dropping improvised finale closing things out in December. Every show happens at the stunning 19th century VBI Theatre at the Cunning Haggards Arts Centre with an intimate 8 p.m. start time. No filler, no compromises, just serious art. Elysium Furnace Works has been doing this independently since 2018. Over 70 events, all volunteer run, all powered by community support. Tickets are now on sale at Eventbrite. If you want to help keep this kind of music thriving, check out their GoFundMe. And there was some trending music news on the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashan Silva. We're going for a short break, we'll be right back after that. You're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashan Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Christian Sands' biography and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about more of his best albums of all time. Here's a quick recap of what's coming up. So we're going to be talking about the years when Christian Sands stopped being just a prodigy and started becoming a force. We begin with Rising, a youthful but ambitious album that blends tradition with early signs of his compositional voice, expanding into chorded textures and bolder writing. From there, the intensity ramps up with Furioso, a fiery session featuring horn players and a growing command of the ensemble interplay. This is Sands discovering how to shape energy, not just generate it. We'll also hear him live, first on Take One, a raw snapshot from an early international tour, capturing spontaneous improvisation and real-time risk. And finally, we'll spotlight his work with Christian McBride, including the legendary Live at the Village Vanguard, a moment that places Sands squarely among the top-tier voices in modern jazz. And there was some insight into what's coming up during this hour, and you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update. You're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashan Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Christian Sands' biography and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about some of his best albums of all time. So let's start in 2007 with Rising. This album feels like a snapshot of young artists on the brink. Sands was still discovering his voice, but even here you can hear the seeds of what would become his signature style. Rising is energetic, curious, and ambitious. The record is framed largely as a part of a chorded experience. Piano, bass, drums, and occasional horns, but it's a piano that drives the narrative. The compositions blend the traditions of jazz with Sands' own emergent personality. There's a playful energy in the way the tunes move between rhythmically intricate sections and lyrical passages, and the interplay between the chorded members is remarkably cohesive for such a young ensemble. Why does this matter? Because Rising is more than just a collection of tunes, it's a stepping stone. It's the album where the young pianist begins to shed his student persona and step into the shoes of a professional artist, setting the stage for the boldness that we'll hear in his subsequent works. Moving forward to 2008, Sands follows up with Furioso. Now if Rising hinted at promise, Furioso shouts it from the rooftops. This is a fiery, vibrant session capturing Sands in full stride. The album isn't just a piano showcase, he's thinking orchestrally, bringing horn players into the mix and stretching the trio format into something more expansive. What's fascinating here is the compositional ambition. Sands is experimenting with textures and ensemble interplay, really testing how far he can push his musical ideas. You get moments that demand your attention, and then passages that feel almost introspective, like he's speaking directly to you through the keys. And why does Furioso matter? It's a bridge between his early trio work and the larger, more ambitious projects that would follow. It's an album that makes you realize Sands isn't just a pianist, he's a thinker, a composer who's deeply aware of the musical conversation that he's creating around him. Fast forward a few years, 2014, and we find Sands in a live context with Take One. Now there's something about live recordings that you can't capture in the studio. The room, the audience, the electricity in the air, it all feeds into the performance. Take One captures him on one of his early international tours, playing in a trio setting. What's so captivating about this album is its authenticity. The improvisation feels spontaneous, almost conversational, and the trio interplay is front and center. You can hear the give and take, the unspoken communication, and the thrill of risk-taking in real time. This album is crucial because it offers a raw glimpse into Sands' stage presence before he became widely recognized. It's one thing to admire a polished studio album, it's another to witness the sparks flying live, to hear a young pianist not just performing but asserting himself, exploring and taking chances. Take One reminds us why live jazz is such an extraordinary art form. It's unpredictable, alive, and in the moment. And then of course we have 2015's Live with Christian McBride, including recordings like the Village Vanguard session. Here Sands isn't the leader, he's part of McBride's trio. The album features a mix of standards and originals, all imbued with exhilarating live energy. You can hear how responsive he is to McBride's bass and the drummer's rhythmic nuances. His improvisational instincts are razor sharp, his comping dynamic, and the way he interacts with the other musicians reveals a virtuous sense of musical empathy. Why is this important? Because it documents Sands in the company of one of jazz's major figures. For anyone interested in Sands' evolution, this album is a masterclass in collaborative brilliance and versatility. So if you step back and look at these four recordings together, Rising, Furioso, Take One, and Live with Christian McBride, we see a clear narrative arc. From a young pianist testing the waters and reshaping his identity, to a fiery composer expanding the trio format, to a live performer discovering the thrill of improvisation, and finally to a versatile ensemble player holding his own with jazz royalty. Each record offers unique perspective on Sands' art history, and together they tell the story of a musician in constant evolution, pushing boundaries and deepening his craft. So whether you're a long-time fan or a newcomer to his work, these albums are essential listening, not just for the technical prowess or the brilliant compositions, but for the sense of journey, growth, and discovery that they embody. And there was some insight into more of Christian Sands' best albums of all time, and this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashan Silva. And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Christian Sands' biography and best hits. So we've come to the end of this week's episode of the Jazz Update, so now it's time to recap what we're talking about on today's show. Born in 1989 in New Haven, Connecticut, he honed his craft at the Newark School of the Arts, developing not just technique but a deep sense of listening, ensemble interplay, and musical storytelling. Early on, it was clear he wasn't just a talented musician, he had vision. Sands made a major leap as a pianist in Christian McBride's Trio, performing at legendary venues like the Village Vanguard, and mastering the art of supporting, leading, and inspiring in real time. Those years shaped him as a listener, collaborator, and composer, skills that would define his recordings as a leading. So now let's talk about his best albums. His early trio and chord projects, Footprints, Harmonica, Rising, and Furioso, show Sands growing from prodigy to a fully confident voice, experimenting with harmony, rhythm, and ensemble textures. Then came his McEvenny Records era, Reach, Facing Dragons, and Be Water, a string of albums blending technical brilliance with emotional depth, culminating in a Grammy nomination for Be Water 2. And Sands doesn't stop there. Christmas Stories reimagines holiday classics with swing and warmth, while his latest, Embracing Dawn, is cinematic, deeply personal concept album exploring heartbreak, healing, and hope across jazz, gospel, and neo-soul textures. So whether you're a jazz purist or just discovering him, Christian Sands proves he's a pianist, composer, and storyteller, a voice bridging tradition and modernity, shaping the sounds of contemporary jazz. And that was some insight into everything that we discussed on this week's episode of the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan Silva. And on that note, we've come to the end of this week's episode of the show. Don't forget, you can check out the archives of today's show on my YouTube channel, The Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan. So I'll see you again next week. Have a great week ahead.